should now be live. Good evening, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Dane saying hello in the background there. How are we all doing today? Just going to have a quick slurp of sugary energy drink.
Because we are not sponsored.
Because we are not sponsored. Hello, Brenson. We're doing okay. How are you? Hello, Melissa. Mackie, I think, is here. Rob Earth, I think, is here as well. Do let me know if you're here in chat, and I will also give you a hello. But yes, so today is going to be something a little different. I've been noticing on Reddit that there's a lot of newcomers to the game, but as well as a lot of sort of, the usual people being a bit unsure how to make their parks look good, for want of another term. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a live Jurassic Architect to show off, some very easy ways of making your parks look better. Hello, Metai. Thank you. I'm glad you like the channel. There's plenty of videos for you to watch. But yeah, so the whole point of today is to sort of demonstrate how this very simple sort of example of a starter park can be improved with some very simple techniques. Melissa, I live in the UK, so we don't celebrate Thanksgiving. But yesterday was fine. So, this is a very simple sort of thing you might expect someone to begin with, a simple entrance, simple pathways, and a couple of enclosures. Very, very easy start. So, there's a few things that we need to do first of all. The first thing I would suggest is that we need to make the entrance more of an entrance. You want to have dedicated zone just for your entrance. So what we're going to do is kind of create an entrance area that kind of just forms. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I quite like that. Yeah. So we're going to do roughly the same thing on the other side. 1 and 2. Was it 2 or was it 3? I think it was 3, wasn't it? There you go. Almost the same, not quite. But we want to just give the entrance something to make it stand out. There we go. We're going to also position the dinosaur manufacturing behind the entrance, just to sort of hide it from sight, really. Obviously, I have the advantage of mods when doing this. I would suggest that anyone on PC, you really ought to be using mods. Like, there's no reason not to if you're on PC not to use mods. And they can really, really help with your builds. But obviously there's a lot of basic tactics you can take away from this. I think I'm going to use these trees, a nice big and bushy. Now, if you leave a big enough gap between buildings and path, you can put your trees in here. just going to use the trees to, you know, just keep the background operations of the park just kind of hidden. Big proponent of using the orange trees just to add some colour to those awful green, you know, barriers. Sure, Melissa, you're on console. Well, again, Mackie, I will try and keep the suggestions of things to do to help you out. Having a dedicated zone for your entrance is, you know, one of those basic tips that everyone should be doing, whether they're on PC or console. You know, don't just have the entrance and then, you know, straight into park. Actually kind of have an area, you know, for your guests. We're going to use a different color of path. And I would say when you're building your park, try to keep your path colors sort of typical throughout the whole thing. So have one particular color of path to represent your sort of your main roads, for want of a better term, and then have a particular color for... Ooh, what's happening down here? Have a particular color for your, like, your plazas, where you're going to put your seating areas, that sort of thing. Like, pick a color to have you for your roads, and then pick a color for your plazas, and then stick to that through the park. Now this in-between line here, we're going to use for planting. Always change the color of the ground texture where you're going to put your trees. Just helps to bed them in. I'm on the tropical map, so we're going to use the mud texture, just because it gives a nice sort of backing. When I was playing Jurassic World Evolution 2 Chaos Theory, do Jurassic World Evolution to erase your park specifically in Chaos Theory mode. I think if you start a new Chaos Theory, it will or remove your autosave, yeah, so just have multiple saves if you want to keep them. Now for this middle bit, I just want to create a sort of rough hedgerow. And as you can see here, for those of you not using mods and on console, none of these bushes are overlapping. So, you know, you can create a decent enough hedgerow with these small bushes. I do like to add the occasional tree here and there. You know, to give the idea that at some point in the future this entrance will have some really nice tall trees to shade it. Now I want to kind of create a sort of wall-like effect around this area. Lots of different ways you can do it. The easiest is probably to use the mural pieces. But I find they're a bit too tall and a bit too dark. I want to have some light still here. So I'm going to use the Malta pieces. And again, even if you don't overlap them, you can get them very close together. I overlap them as a matter of course, but even without mods, you can get them very close together. So they can work as the perfect sort of boundary. There we go. And we're just going to do the same on the other side. There we go. You can obviously do this with anything. You could also use the planter boxes to do this sort of thing. But I prefer to use these wall pieces because they're longer. And something that I would say about all of my parks is you want to try and find ways to use as few pieces as possible, because the more pieces you use, the more complex your park gets, the greater the piece count, the greater the performance loss. And really what you want to do is minimize that fact, because the game is very badly optimized. So the least amount of performance loss you can do, the better. So think about, one example of it is, I can give you a really obvious example. So you've got these planters, which are small, or you've got this planter, which is long. It's about 1.5 a small planter. Now, it might be more piece efficient to use these bigger ones than these little ones. You might save a few pieces, and that's really what you have to think about with. I would say that's a strategy you need with all of Frontiers games: Planet Coaster, Planet Zoo, Jurassic World Evolution, Prehistoric Kingdom. You want to find really efficient ways of using pieces, because the more you build, the greater the cost on your CPU, the greater the performance hit. Hello, Smell. Fletcher, do you believe Jurassic World Evolution 3 should start with only half the current species plus some new ones, then add the rest through free updates? I believe, Matai, that's what Evo thinks would be best. I'm in two minds about it. I think personally, if they were to do that and give us only half the roster, then the half we do get would absolutely have to be, there would have to be demonstrable reasoning as to why they've only given us half. Like the half that we do get has to be really, really good. There has to be good animation quality or stuff like that. Big overhauls. And I would expect the rest of the animals to be given to us for free. I wouldn't expect to be charged again for the other half. But personally, I think they've gone too far. I think they've kind of shot themselves in the foot. I don't think the community would accept them only having half the roster, because they've given too many animals to us, or to people at this point. So what I'm doing here is we are creating a bit more of a guest area out of these sections. Making sure they've got walling off where you're expecting guests to sort of sit and spend time, walling them away from where guests are basically going to be walking. Just divides off the area, sort of what you have in a house. The whole of a house is not one room that you do everything in. You have separate rooms for separate things. You should do the same with your parks. And what we're going to do is we're just going to improve this. We're going to put in some trees. We're going to make use of the palms. And I just want to put in... how many? I think 3. And that's another thing I would suggest people do. You don't need to put in a million things. 1 or 2 is sufficient. You don't need tons and tons of decorative pieces. Apparently I've made an error here, but oh well, this is only rough, you know. Hello, Derpy Phantom. Planet Coaster 2 would be better if they released it in early access. Well, if they had an early access price tag, yes. I think the problem I have with Planet Coaster 2, and it's the same problem I have with Jurassic World Evolution 1, Jurassic World Evolution 2, is they put a AAA price tag, you know, 50, 60 pounds, on a game that was clearly not ready for release. And we were expected to bankroll that and then accept a game that was in a bad state. So, fountains. I think fountains are really important for parks. One of the biggest problems with Jurassic World Evolution is that the park can be kind of static, kind of one, you know, one ambience, no real movement apart from your dinosaurs. So having fountains, things that move, add sound, can really help. And we're just going to add the tables and chairs in now. So what we're going to do, we're not going to put too many in, and we're also going to vary. We're going to vary which ones we use. Don't all go for the one type of table and chair. You're not ever going to see that. It's never going to be uniform. Just helps to make parks look realistic, and don't use tons and tons and tons. I've seen parks where people kind of put one there and then put one there and put one there, and they put they squeeze them in. And I'm like, if you go to a restaurant, would you want to sit that close next to somebody else? You know, give people some space to have, you know, their own conversations and privacy. You know, it's important to give them that room. Now again, because I've got mods, I'm just going to add a little extra decorative flair here. I want to put a couple of obelisks in, just to give some height here. And I'm going to put some benches in. Again, another thing I see too often is one type of seating and no thought given to other types of seating now that we have other types. You should definitely consider having some specific areas that are just benches, specific areas that might just be picnic benches. It would give people a range of seating. Some people might just want to quickly take a seat to check, you know, something, or to do up their shoelace or whatever. You don't need a huge table like that. Yeah, I'm reasonably happy with that. I think that's fine. You could certainly do more. You can, you know, put more trees in and stuff, but I want to kind of not focus too heavily on one particular area of the park. There aren't enough fountains. There are definitely not enough fountains. I wish we had gotten more of them. I'm just going to take a slurp of drink. Also catch up with the chat a little bit. Oh, we don't really need Chunkingosaurus if we have Hoangosaurus or Gigantospinosaurus. Yes. I do have particular thoughts on that. I definitely think chunking is a bit of a dead animal for the game. I don't think many people use it, and I don't think there's any purpose to it. There's quite a lot of overlap in the Stegosaur family. Chunking, Gigant, Spino, and Kentro are all very similar. And I think I would be okay with chunking and perhaps Gigant Spino being removed for something better. I certainly wouldn't miss them if they were gone. Hoango I would definitely miss. It's one of my cutest favourite animals in the game. A lot of obscure species for sure. Okay, so next up is sort of how we go from the entrance to these enclosures. It's a bit dull. So what we're going to do is I want to create a sort of area in the middle here for, you know, just to serve as a bit of an entrance to the park. So I'm actually going to take a big chunk out of these enclosures. And then taking this line here, and again sticking to one path color, I'm going to go up by like that, and up like that. And then we're going to just create a nice semicircular area here. There we go. We're going to remove those. And so now we have a bit of like a secondary area beyond the entrance before we get into the park. Just to space things out a little bit. These enclosures we're going to completely remake. But I'm going to try and do it in a way where, you know, that it's not over the top and excessive like some people I've seen. Syntausaurus, I would agree, should definitely be dropped too. I think Allura Titan kind of makes it pointless. Oh yes, Smoke, thank you. Yes, so that's the plan for December, to have one all-day stream each week of December. Not 100% sure what those streams are going to entail yet, but as soon as I have more concrete plans, I will let people know. So, what we're going to do here is make this our first attraction. Now, I'm going to use a modded attraction because I think it suits this area better, but obviously you can use the in-game viewing towers if you wish. Now, I think I want that a little bit further forwards, actually. I want the view to be a bit better than where it was, just like that. There we go. So this viewing tower now makes sense for it to be here. You've got a good view into these enclosures, and you've got a nice view of the entrance and everything else. And it means that when people enter the park, and this is something I think people don't think about when they're trying to build a park. You know, when they say they want their parks to look better and they want their parks to be sort of a better standard, you know, to match someone like Evo. Think about sight lines, you know, think about what people are seeing when they're walking around. So now when people enter the park, they're now going to have this wonderful tree-lined avenue, and then they're going to see this viewing tower with this glorious flag on top, and they're going to want to go to it and have a look. Now, again, just like last time, we're going to use some sort of spacing to kind of divide the viewing tower area away from the rest of this zone. Going to make use of the Alpine. I think this is Taiga or Alpine? I think they both have the same, don't they? I think this is the Alpine options. The Alpine, actually, that's worth mentioning, because I don't think people actually, like, look. So, each of the planters for the different, like, areas, they do actually have different stuff in them. And again, I think that's something else worth looking at when you're building your parks, is actually thinking about, like, what sort of style do I want? Because they're actually all very radically different. They have different types of plant in them. You know, you have the European have these wonderful, I think these are supposed to be rhododendrons. And then you have the alpines, which are these much smaller, lower flowers and bushes. But again, these both predominantly, you know, you've got purple and white in colour. Here you've got, you know, nice yellows and oranges with the aloe veras. And here, these are just green. The tropical ones are just green. I think they're actually very boring. So actually think about what plants are actually inside of the planters that you're putting down. And actually, you've got the same sort of differences with the tree planters too. You know, you've got very different trees in each one. The tropical one, you've got a small palm. The alpine one, you've got a small silver birch. The desert one, you have this very tall, I think it's a Joshua tree. I might be wrong, but I think it's a Joshua tree. And then the European one, you have, I'm not sure what this is supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be something like a hawthorn or something similar to that. But again, very different trees, and they can give your zones a bit of a different feel. And yes, obviously if you are using mods, you can also sync them down to create actual flower beds, but I like them as they are. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go with the European ones with the trees here, because I want there to be a little bit of shaded cover. And we're just going to put 3 of them in, like that. And then what I'm going to do with the rest of this area, so I'm going to use the hedgerow bushes just to cover this off. We're also going to stick a few trees here. Again, have a couple of different colours. Ooh, that's a bit big. Just to sort of cover the tower, make it look a bit more natural. Now we are still going to have guest path and stuff around here. I'm going to make this one a little thicker. I would always suggest you try to make paths thicker rather than thinner. And I do actually quite like the idea of having spaces in the middle, because spaces sort of provide you with somewhere that you can put trees, decorations. Just makes it very easy to add some decorative flair to your parks. So all of these, again, we're going to use for trees, I think. Put them in. There we go. There hasn't been much news about Jurassic Park Survival, and I think that's because of everything that's going on with Embracer Group. The fact that basically the company who owned Embracer went bust. And obviously that's not very good. So sort of news is fairly low on the ground, but hopefully there'll be something new soon. I'm kind of hoping that we might get some news around the Game Awards. I know a lot of people are kind of assuming we're going to have some Jurassic World Evolution 3 news around the Game Awards. But I think we might also get some Jurassic Park Survivor news. Which would be nice. So something else I see people not doing with their parks is they tend to use trees from one type of biome as if they're scared of mixing varieties together. And that's just not how vegetation and that works. You will get different types of tree growing, especially in tropical places, especially in Europe as well. Some things I like to do, just add the occasional hedge in here. I'm going to put some hedgerows in here. And just a couple of hedgerows in here. Just to kind of ground the vegetation in a bit. There we go. So now we've got like this lovely tower flanked by trees, but it also means the sort of enclosures are kind of hidden away, so to go and have a look at them you actually have to go over there. Yes, I know if you're on last gen you're restricted to one type of biome, which is a massive disadvantage. I'm certainly not sure how I would handle that. Now, something that this sort of setup allows for is that we can actually use this to then guide our enclosure building. So what we're going to do is remove these fence pieces, and then we're going to have the enclosures viewable from here. Now we'll go with what I consider a traditional style of enclosure, so we'll use traditional viewing structures. And I'm going to use the Jurassic World ones. I find the Jurassic World viewing structures are, they're not difficult to make work in a lot of different biomes and stuff. Now, I don't want it right up to the path. If it's right up to the path, it looks awkward and ugly. Because these are, square shapes. And square shapes on a curve, they just look ugly. So, I'm actually going to just create a little bit of path. Just to there we go. That's better. And then we're going to connect that to the fence. We'll keep the curve. But again, we're not going straight back to the path. I want to kind of keep the curve. And this gives you a standoff, which is both more realistic because you would never want an electric fence right up to the path. That's just a terrible idea. But it also gives you space to put vegetation, put decorations, that sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use rocks. And again, I think this is something that a lot of people are starting to do now, but you might not be doing it on your own builds, is to use the rocks to create artificial walls. It's a little piece count heavy, but it does look good. go. And now we've got two little areas right next door to this. And instead of, doing the same sort of color of vegetation and ground texture, we're actually going to go with sand here. There's absolutely no reason why you can't have multiple different types of ground texture in a place. Theme parks are entirely artificial. They're never going to be natural. So if you want to create a sort of artificial desert area, go right ahead. Don't be limited to the overall biome of the map, essentially, is what I'm getting at. And then we're going to turn these into very quick, where are you? 2136. So we're going to turn these into very quick decorative areas. We're going to put in a few stones. And then I want something to make them stand out. Lots of different options that we could go for here. But what I'm going to do is we're going to go for a few dinosaur statues. Just to make them stand out. Statues don't necessarily have to be the animals that are going to be in there. Let's have some Triceratops. There we go. And then we're going to put in plenty of plants and stuff here. Now, when doing planted areas, gardens, that sort of thing, I would say put in your biggest trees first. I quite like using these trees that come from the Mediterranean set. These are actually olive trees, but I think they work very good as sort of low decorative trees. But always start with like your biggest trees, then move on to your smaller ones. I'm going to use a couple of bushes just to ground them in. Now, obviously, as a result of mods, I can make stuff overlap, so it's a lot easier to make gardens look sort of realistic. Obviously, if you're not playing with mods or playing on console, do your best to get plants to be as close to each other as possible to make your gardens look as good as you can. And always use a range of heights as well. Mix and match vegetation types if you can. Just really helps make them look a bit more realistic. Something I like to do if you are using mods is grabbing these ferns and things like that and, oops, wrong button, and shrinking them into the ground, and then you have instant bush. Because we are lacking bush variety in this game, so anything you can do to turn trees into bushes really helps. There we go. And just like that, we've got two very nice little garden areas onto our enclosure. See you later, Berenson. Verticality is very important to a build, though.
Yes.
I would suggest you do try to build on a tropical map, Mackie. I think the ground texture is the best out of all of the particular ground textures. I think building on a tropical map is a really good. Something I actually really did enjoy that I did a few months ago, and I think the park tour is currently up on the channel, is build on Isla Nublar 93, but build on so instead of building from the waterfall outwards, build on the low ground at the back of the map first and build upwards, and you do get a bit more of a different feel for the map if you do it that way around. Okay, so since we've done this sort of outside of this enclosure, we're actually going to tackle the sort of enclosures here, because this straight line path I think is kind of boring. So I want to add a little bit more curve to the build. Something, you know, that's, you know, just a nice sweeping sort of curve. We're going to keep on with the which side round? Yeah, we'll have it this side. There we go. I'm going to take the curve up to there. Get around. If you want to get those really good curves, make sure you're always putting frameworks in between them. Yep. Now, this then gives us a bit of a new shape to each of our enclosures. What I like to do is use the, you see where we've got like the dirt texture? Where the even there. Where the path creates the dirt texture. I like using the dirt texture as a sort of line just to guide where the fence is going to go. To give you that space between them, which you can then use for other things. We'll focus on this side for the moment. There we go. Now what I'm going to do, Matai, I have a fear of wasting space. Wasting space is vital. If you do not waste some space, your parks will never look good. And that's me being really brutally honest. But wasting space is the most important thing to do when building parks. Well, actually it's not. Because you can waste space and it be completely inefficient. Wasting space in a good way is vital for making your parks look better. Now, parks are more than just your dinosaurs and amenities and enclosures. Parks are also about the natural environments around them. And it's about, you know, giving yourself space to waste, you know. Doing stuff like this, wasting space to have nice gardens, is vital. You'll see on pretty much all of my parks, if you check out my park tours, there are huge areas where it's just natural environment. rivers or mountains or forests. Waste space. I think for a lot of players of Jurassic World, and I'm not sure why this they have this fear. They seem to think that when you're, regardless of the map, and regardless of what you're playing, you should, fit as many animals as possible in them. I think this is the idea as well behind the drive to the people want to have bigger maps and bigger maps and bigger maps. They think that we should have every single animal on the map at all times, and I think that's a terrible idea. I think you should pick species with purpose. And the square maps, as people rightly say, are already massive. But they're I honestly don't think they've been designed with the idea that you fit every species on them. That's not the point of them. So what I'm doing with the edges of these enclosures here is I'm giving them a wall of vegetation. I've made this one a bit close to the path, so the vegetation is going to be covering part of the fence. Obviously, you could just move the fence to do this. But what I'm doing here is I'm kind of protecting the dinosaurs' right to privacy. You'll see this in a lot of zoos, that when you go to a zoo, you'll only see the animal probably from one particular direction. That's because they don't really want guests seeing the animals all of the time. Natural animals, even in captivity, they need some privacy. So a good way of doing that when you're building enclosures is to, line the edges of your enclosures with plants or with wall sections that basically hides them from view. So guests, in reality would have to come to the place where you're supposed to view the animal from to view the animal. Again, it's just for a bit of realism. Now, what we're going to do now is do some simple enclosure advice. This is actually a pretty big, nicely sized enclosure. Now, allow me to let you in on one of my biggest bugbears. People who make totally flat enclosures. It's boring, it's unrealistic, it sucks. Never make enclosures that are 100% flat if you can avoid it. What we're actually going to do with this particular enclosure, we're going to create what I like to call a well enclosure. And what I mean by a well enclosure is that it's ever so slightly lower than the level of the people. So they're, in theory, looking downwards into it. You'll see this at a lot of zoos, actually. You'll see this sort of style where they have a sort of very steep incline. It's just another method of animal control. Keeps them from getting too close to the fences, which is obviously a really good safety feature. And we're going to have this almost all the way around. Like that. Now, like I say, this is a fairly large enclosure. So the whole thing is not going to be that sort of level. We're actually... Sorry. Whoopsie daisy. That was the wrong button. We're going to create a couple of different sort of areas here. So we're going to have a sort of higher ground and a lower ground. And then we're going to have the water on the low ground. Naturally. I thought this was... I thought I flattened this to water height. That's the other thing about park building on this game. The way that this game does not handle water well at all. Oh, I see. Now you're happy. Okay, so we're gonna fill this area with water. We're not gonna use all of this. Something like that. Yeah, so we want the animals to come down from the high ground, to come down to the water to drink, so people can, you know, get a good view. I'm going to re-smooth out that terrain there. Re-smooth out that terrain there. Yes, obviously enclosures can't be too big, Jow, otherwise dinosaurs will end up dying. You watched my video on why Jurassic World Evolution 3 doesn't need bigger maps, and I completely agree with you. I'm very much more in favor of manually created maps with natural features that have been placed by a human being, as opposed to just huge, boring maps. Like these square maps, I think, were the worst inclusion in the game. Because A, people tried to fit every single animal on them and crash their games and then complained about it. And then B, they're boring. They're just flat, empty, square maps. And it means people load into them and then they completely lack any sort of artistic inspiration from the map design in itself. Maps should always be designed. That's just my perspective. Hey, would you consider building a park in Maple Whiteland? Oh, blimey, it's been a long time since I've read Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World. That's for sure. What's the best shape for water? I hate just placing a circle or river. I think have the shape of the water relate to what you want the enclosure to look like. You know, let's just do some really rough ideas. Let's just where have we got like yeah, let's use this area that we're not using over here, and let's just go over some basic water formations to help you guys. So obviously you've got like the basic river, which is just like a meander through the enclosure. Obviously the size of the enclosure might, you know, make the meander different. If you want the river to look more interesting, have an area that's much higher than the rest. So go up a little bit. And create a sort of high section to the river. And then try to turn this into... It's not a particularly good version of one. That's a little bit better. You know, you turn this into like a bit of a waterfall. Put in usually your lightest texture. If you haven't got waterfall pieces, put in your lightest texture. Rocks are your friend here. You know, put in some big rocks either side. Put in some rocks in the bottom just to be a sort of pretend sort of thing. Grab some plants. Try to keep it to short, sort of. I like these bushes. I think they're aloe veras. They work quite well as water plants. But obviously here, you know, big hedges are going to be your advantage. Cover up the space. Put some bushy trees in. Just to kind of cover up the fact that there's not water there. You know, and then you've got a sort of kind of a waterfall-like enclosure with a river. That was very, very quick, and that already looked fairly passable. Didn't do too bad job there. Alternatively, if you don't want to make a river, let's just flatten all this out again. You can just go for a patch of water, but don't just put a patch of water in the middle. You know, if you have a viewing enclosure, you know, here, you know, consider putting your water down here so people have to come and have a look. Alternatively, do it the other way around. Have the water at the back of the enclosure, have your food at the front. You want the dinosaurs to move around the enclosure. You'll only do that by separating water and food. So have water one place, food another place. Make them walk from one to the other, and then you get natural movement between the two. If you're going to put patches of water in as well, like consider lowering the patch. That's not very low. Let's put that a little bit further down, shall we? Now, consider putting the water quite deep. Smooth the area around it, so you have a sort of crater that the animals are going to walk into, or vice versa. Have the water high. And again, take the animals, have them walk up to it. Have like a watering hole above the rest of the area. Also, there's nothing wrong with just a large lake. But if you think it's boring, cut out the middle. Turn it into an island. Works well with carnivores, I feel. Put the carnivore feeder on the island, surround it with trees, so it kind of hides the carnivore feeder a little bit. And yeah, works perfectly well. Bless you.
Thank you.
And obviously, if you're doing something like a swamp enclosure, you want to use basically as much water as you can. So if you want to make a competent swamp, put in all of your water first, and then just make cutouts in it, and then go over and decorate. I happen to think swamps only work well if they're very big enclosures. Because for a good swamp, you need as much water as possible. But obviously you need the land in there too. So I think a really big enclosure works best if you're doing a swamp. You're worried about the Jurassic Park survival game's quality because the same company made the Quiet Place game, and it was quite buggy. I didn't realize the company behind the Quiet Place game were the same people. Eesh. That makes me question it a bit. Oh well. So, yes, back to this one. So again, sticking with the water idea, never just put water down and then do nothing with it. Always bed the water in with different texture. Now the texture you use is obviously going to be entirely dependent on the biome of the map. For tropical, I tend to like either going with mud or with going with sand. Put mud around the edge. Keep your sand in the middle. There you go. Don't be scared to add an occasional darker spot as well, just to make it look like there's some deep places. And then we want to kind of cover up the fact that these are completely unnatural, so we're going to cover the endings in rocks. And make these into rocky sort of end areas. And then we're going to have a few more smaller rocks. Again, I am just doing this very quickly. Obviously, the longer you take with your enclosures, the better they will look. Going to use plenty of big bushy trees again. There we go. Same with this end. Remember to mix and match the types of tree you're using. Gonna have a couple of big ones. There we go. Always make sure to have different heights. Nope. Put in some bushes. Same for down here. Gonna put in a few different heights of vegetation. I kind of feel like there's some vegetation that works best in watercourses than others. Like the low flowers, aloe vera bush, this sort of ferny thing, I think they make the best sort of watercourse plants. And no worries, Andre. I mean, that's the whole purpose of today's stream, is to give you guys some ideas of how to improve your builds. Gonna put in some rock texture here, just because obviously this is above the ground. I'm going to make sure there's plenty of mud bedding that in. There we go. I'm actually going to put in a few more plants around this viewing gallery. Just helps it look a bit more natural, you know. Right, now for the rest of the enclosure. Will be relatively simple. I say relatively simple. If you're going to have something like this, where you've got like an outcrop, I find it's kind of a good idea to actually decorate that area. So we're actually going to use rocks to kind of make this a proper outcropping where dinosaurs are not going to be going. Again, going to use plenty of trees to bed this in. Pick a few different coloured ones. I really do think using different colours of tree is like really key to improving the vegetation. So if you can do it, always do it. There we go, a couple of hedges. And this kind of then gives you like a viewing area. And then behind this is where we're going to have, you know, the basic plants, the food for your... We'll put some herbivores in here, you know. Now we're going to use some low intensity mud to create a worn pathway around the enclosure, just to make it look like the dinosaurs have been sort of going and moving. If you're not using mods and obviously you don't have an intensity meter, what you can do is just do a quick click. So you just quickly click, you do get just a light patch, and that can just help. It might be a bit much, just light patch, just a quick tap, and you get the same sort of effect. So don't think you have to have the intensity mod to get that sort of effect. A light tap will do the same thing. And then we're just going to put in plants. Again, it looks like we need to have some texture here. Texture here. There we go. Try and vary the sorts of things we have. I really like the cycad grove if you can get as many of these ferns as possible. There we go. These are fibrous ground cover plants. They are basically water plants. You know, there's horsetails and stuff in there, which are water plants. So I like to put plenty of them around water. Just helps make things look a little bit more realistic. Yeah. And if you think the place looks a bit empty, put an occasional rock. And put a few more trees in. There you go. Already, you know, I would say that already looks like a really great enclosure. You know, that in itself would just be perfectly fine to have. Hello, Dino Army. Some more advanced ideas for your enclosures, especially if you're using mods, but you know, there are other things we've got going on here for even those that don't mod. You know, fallen trees. Just helps to liven up your enclosures there. If you're using mods, something I like to do is to have trees leaning upwards against stuff, so have them sort of leaning against rocks. Again, gives your enclosures some verticality, which is really missing in this game. There you go. Also, be really nice to have some movement in here. So we're going to stick in a fountain. And we're going to put it... Yeah, I think this side makes sense. Again, if you're using mods, use the lagoon fountains. I'm going to move some of these plants around. And we're going to stick another rock in the back here. Probably 2 rocks. There you go. Give some movement to the enclosure, add some sound to the enclosure so it's not dull and boring, serves a good purpose, keeps the water moving, stops it, you know, turning gross and horrible. Can go a bit further and even do, you know, have something, say, like this. You know, we can grab the gate and have maybe... Where would this work? Maybe we can have it at this end? Wouldn't really be seen. Maybe you could have it sort of in the overgrowth here, you know? Stick in the old Jurassic Park sign, people would see it. You know, you could see it through there, you could see it through here. I think a lot of people with this game struggle to use decorations in interesting ways. They kind of go, "Oh well, we've got a gate, so it has to go over a path or something." But why not add it to your enclosures as a decorative aspect? You know. Yes, I've heard Jurassic World Rebirth will have action and horror elements. My problem is I believe the article said something along the lines of, you know, focused on the action elements, and I feel that if you think Jurassic Park 1 was an action movie, I think you've watched the film wrong. There is action in the film, yes, but I wouldn't call it an action film. Nor would I call it a horror film. So I don't know, I'm not 100% convinced by what I've heard in that article. Now, species. Now, you know, you've got a nice looking enclosure. What species are you going to put in it? So, you would build your enclosure traditionally with an idea of what you're going to put in here. I've built this with the idea that we're going to put herbivores in here. It's going to be a mixed herbivore enclosure, but it's probably going to contain a lot of animals of different sizes. So I'm actually going to make the fencing a little bit more substantial. I want the park to actually feel semi-realistic, and I don't want my dinosaurs, you know, behind really flimsy looking fence. If I was going to have very dangerous animals in here, ceratopsians, big sauropods, big big stegosaurs, that sort of thing, I would have probably double layer fencing, same as I would for carnivores, which, you know, I'll show you over here how I would do that. For something like this, I'm going to use the dinosaur spawner just because it's quicker. You know, I think it's perfectly okay for, say, some ceratopsians. I think it's also kind of okay for some easy to look after hadrosaurs. So we'll put some Edmontos in here. And maybe you might have some ankylosaurids. Let's put in the poor old sauropelta that often... No, let's put in Polacanthus. Well, we need something a little bit... No. We'll stick with Polacanthus. I'll put in some Polacanthus. For an enclosure this size, I would say you could easily get 3 different species of dinosaur in here and have some reasonably large herds. I think if you're going to put sauropods in here, I would stick to probably 2. Let's grab a sauropod, Alamo. Yeah, 2 sauropods in an enclosure of this size with maybe 5 or... yeah, 2 sauropods and maybe about 8 other animals. You know, you don't want your enclosures to feel horribly cramped, is what I'm getting at. Make sure there's plenty of room. You want plenty of room for these guys. You're supposed to be making their lives better, not worse. Obviously, you want to give them particular skins and stuff like that. That's all part of it as well, but we're strictly talking about building today, not about skin choice. But skin choice is important to make your parks look better. If you were going to have like a carnivore exhibit on this side... So actually what I'm going to say is you want double layer fencing. I have noticed people do struggle sometimes to do particular shapes and stuff with fence, so I'm just going to show you how I would double fence this. So let's do the same sort of thing that we did over there. We'll put in our viewing area. There we go. Connect our path, our fence up. Like that. And then to do double layering, I find the best place to start is with the corners. So put in a corner piece. Then connect them up. Now here, we're going to go into, you know, not quite a corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in an artificial corner. There we go. And then do the same here. Again, we've got a corner here. There we go. Very roughly done. Usually I take a bit more time, but there you go. Very simply double fenced. Makes it look a bit more realistic if you're going to have carnivores in here. And then I would go, you have your strongest level of fence on the inside. So let's go all in and we'll have the proper hardcore fence on the inside. And then you have your lighter type of fence on the outside. And then in here, you know, put whatever you like. We'll just roughly put something in here so it's not empty. Because I don't want empty enclosures here. We're going to stick in our carnivore feeder. And let's stick in let's have Phassalosuchus. I haven't used this guy in a while. Nice. You know, so that's what I would do for a carnivore enclosure. Have double layered fencing. And I would probably also do this for particularly dangerous plant eaters as well. Big sauropods, that sort of thing. Triple layering is a bit much, but I suppose if you wanted to make like a hybrid zone, you could definitely triple layer. Do you have any information why LA Studios hasn't updated their mods in almost 2 years? Well, their mods work. At least the ones I use do. Tarchia and... oh, blimey. Argentinosaurus and Tarchia work. I don't think all of their mods still work, but most of them I think do. So you might be able to see that I've done a few skeletons here, just to show people that this is how you can create geometric shapes. So if you want a hexagon, or I say a hexagon, an octagon. There you go. Or if you want a circle. And again, all this is, it's just two straight lines up, and then you find the middle point, and then you just draw the skeleton lines out. It's so easy to do. And you can do the same sort of thing in any number of sizes that you want. So say if you only wanted a relatively small circle, you could do 1, 2, 3, 4. Find the 2 position, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and then this one, the game will probably auto complete it for you, you know? There you go. The big part of making, you know, perfectly geometric shapes for your parks is just building the framework around it first. So, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on aviaries and lagoons. I don't think people take enough time to think about which aviary to use, because they do all look very different. You've got the DFW one, you've got the Jurassic World one, and you've got the Jurassic Park one. Jurassic Park one, you know, gives you this cage all the way down to the ground. There's basically no concrete at the bottom at all. This is the one I actually prefer using. I think it's the one that looks the best. The Malta one, I think, is just a retexture of the Jurassic Park one. Oh, actually, it is slightly different. Slightly different. The only reason I don't really like any of the Malta buildings because of this horrible rusty metal. I just don't really think it suits any sort of park unless you're going for an abandoned one. But just thinking strictly about these three, I use Jurassic Park one the most. DFW one, you know, you have the same sort of cage netting as well as the outer electric fence. So if you don't, if you want to keep sort of the cage effect, you go with that one. The Jurassic World one, it looks impressive. It looks very shiny. You have this hexagonal glass. Looks amazing and wonderful. I actually hate it. I actually really, really don't like this idea. Because this is basically a giant greenhouse. In a desert, it's going to be cooking everything inside it. I really don't like it. I only tend to use the Jurassic Park one. Well, obviously, you would say, oh, well, it probably has climate control and everything else. But why do that when you could just use, you know, one that doesn't need it? So again, typical building advice, always build on angle snaps. Just helps with laying things out. And for this particular aviary, we're going to do a triple one. Next, I'm going to put in my viewing enclosures. And again, I don't think people take long enough to actually look at these types of viewing structure. Really, there's only two I would suggest you use, the Jurassic Park one or the Jurassic World one. I think the other types of viewing area, unless you're going with a you know, facility or abandoned park in mind, I think these two are horribly ugly and very difficult to use in an actual tourist focused park. So you've got the Jurassic Park one or the Jurassic World one. Obviously the Jurassic World one has this lovely Canva sails out the front. Or you've got the Jurassic Park one, which has the nice sort of Aztec theme and the fire. I personally don't like using the Jurassic World one that often. I think the Jurassic World one is too big. I think it's kind of ugly. And also, it has gaps in the roof and the sides. I think it's tremendously unsafe. So I would always use the Jurassic Park one. Obviously, we do have the option of using other things. We have the option of using, you know, the viewing towers. But again, I think they look a bit functional and too facility-esque for a park you might use for guests. Obviously, you've got the viewing dome, which you can use. Although I do find that the standard viewing dome is a bit short. I prefer to actually use the, again, thanks to mods, I prefer to use the aquatic viewing dome, just because it's quite tall, so it brings everyone more to the pterosaur's elevation. You do have to sink it into the ground, obviously, and again, you can only do it if you're using mods. But if you are using mods, I would say definitely make some aviaries using the aquatic dome. Yeah, like Berenson says, the aviaries lack any sort of elevation of their own. So if you can put stuff in there to give it elevation, like the aquatic viewing dome, really helps. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the positioning of the viewing areas to help guide where the path is going. Interesting. This one turned out a little bit short. Huh. They must have miscounted. There we go. I've still managed to miscount. Doesn't have to be perfect. There are tolerances here, and this is only for demonstration purposes. I keep forgetting that. Again, obviously, we've got space there for trees. Something I think too many people do also is they just have like their path go into, like, they do something like this. They just have the path go straight into the viewing area, and that's like kind of it. I would always say like have kind of like a guest area kind of attached to the viewing area. And then obviously do the same thing for this that you do with the other viewing areas. So let's actually like properly wall this off. Make it a bit more of a sort of grandiose sort of affair. Gonna put in a few little planters here. And then again, we're going to put some tables and chairs in. Might even just put one more planter in here and here, just to separate the zones off a bit more. And it just helps to make the viewing area feel a bit more embedded into the park. And again, add some trees in here. Just helps make more of it, you see. Oh, hello, Evolution Square. I didn't see you there. So, you know, don't just plonk a viewing gallery onto the side of your aviary. Actually think about building the area around it as well. Inside of the aviary, again, take the same lessons from, you know, your general enclosure design to your aviary. You know, think about how you're going to want the water. I mean, let's just do something really fast. Let's just do like a quick river. Let's actually make this one a completely different biome. So we're going to make this one desert. There we go. And we want the water to be a completely different colour, so we're going to use your mud colour here. Going to put in some stones, hide the ends of that river. Yep. Put in some trees. Again, we're going to go with the nice bushy ones. Make sure to use plenty of different colours. Yeah, the dirt and the sand are definitely... I definitely miss not having tropical mud and tropical dirt. They're so good. Gonna use some big hedges just to disguise the viewing gallery there. Damn. Again, movement. We want some movement in here because otherwise, you know, other than the pterosaurs, it's going to be a bit flat. Now, annoyingly, there is a bug, or I say it's a bug, I think it's an unintentional sort of aspect of the game. The fountains don't make sound when they're inside of the aviaries at all. I can demonstrate this to you, so we'll put one in here. So you can see it's completely silent. But if I go out here, you can hear it. It makes no sense to me. And any fountain you put in here will not have sound. So even like the normal fountains, the ones that, you know, maybe they didn't expect you to put in here, but people might try and put them in here. Not a sound. It's such a weird oddity. Such a weird oddity. But I like to have movement in my enclosures, so I'm going to put a fountain in here. Going to line it with rocks. Actually going to put a few different types of tree here. I'm going to go back to those lovely Mediterranean olive trees. Put a few of them. Something I've actually discovered recently, I actually love the effect of. These olive trees, you see, they're slightly curved over. So if you put them either side of a path, you get this lovely archway over them. And I think it looks really cool. You know, you combine that with other elements, but you get a nice tree archway. So yeah, the Mediterranean olive trees, some of my favorites. I'm going to put a few palms in here too. A few bushes. Something else, if you're using mods, Evo, plant pots, you can, if you just put them into the fountains, because of the heights of the fountains and the heights of the plant pots, you can actually make it, you know, you've basically got now plant pot sort of vegetation for the fountains. You don't have to mess around sinking them into the ground like you do with other plants. You can just stick the potted plants straight in there. Because I think some of the fountains are a bit dull in terms of vegetation. Just helps them look a bit more pretty. Oh, you're building something very ambitious, taking a break because my hands hurt. Yeah, it can get, when you're using Kyodenics mods, especially when you're constantly Raising and lowering vegetation, it can be a pain in the ass and give you your fingers calluses and all sorts of stuff. Sinking these bushes into the ground is makes such a difference. There's like a few particular types of tree. So it's this one, these ones, and there was one other, I think it's this one. Yeah, so these will work really well if you sink them into the ground. So you can turn these into nice palmy bushes. Same with this guy, sink it into the ground, you've got a nice fern. This guy, I actually like sinking this really big tree into the ground a little bit more. And, you know, it's not a perfect mangrove tree, but it does work if you want to sort of, you know, a tree with many different, like, branches and stuff. There was another one, actually. These guys I love to use. I think these are really ugly trees. Does anyone actually know what types of tree these actually are? I have never ever seen a tree like this. I know they're obviously meant to be desert trees, but I've never even seen anything like this in David Attenborough's documentaries. Hello, Dane. Do you have any idea?
I have seen that type of tree before, but I cannot remember its name.
Bloody ugly, though.
It's form over function.
Form over function.
Sorry, function over form, sorry.
But I think they look infinitely better if you sink them into the ground. And then you have this like really nice low ground cover sort of woody bushes.
Which is...
They move around a little bit, but they work quite nicely as ground cover.
Which is absolutely hilarious considering those trees were evolved that way.
It's a savanna one. Yeah, I'll have to have a look. I have been meaning to do a video actually on like figuring out what real life plants these trees are supposed to be. Like, because obviously these are the olive trees. You've got coconut palms, the hawthorn trees. So I might do a video trying to figure out all of the actual types of tree, vegetation tree. Yeah. And then obviously in here you can put whatever dinosaur or whatever animals you like. This was only a very quick go. I'm going to stick some animals in here that I really need to use more often because I love these guys. Where is he? There he is, the little Havenator. I really love the little Havenator. Don't use him enough. Where's the venomous cocktail? I wonder how this one works with that. Does it count as extra cosmetic? That's interesting. So if you're using the dinosaur spawner and... Oh, hang on. That's... Oh, hang on. That was one of the cosmetics, so... Ah, there's venomous cocktail. Okay, so those count as cosmetics if you have extra ones. I do love these guys. They're beautiful. Even the basic pattern. You know, there's your basic one. It's so beautiful. La Havenator. I think that's how you pronounce it. No. Yes, La Havenator, La Havenator. Because it's not La Jazzfinator, not American. So I think it is supposed to be La Havenator, or Ledge Venator, something like that. It's one of my favorite new species mods. I think they're based on a raptor, but they're adorable. But yeah, and then obviously to bed the aviary in a bit more, I do think there are a few. It's actually why I'm doing videos on like my top mods and top mod new species because of Evo. There are a few new species mods that I definitely think Evo would enjoy having in her parks. So not next week, but the week after next, there's a video going to be in like my top 10 new species mods. We were just saying that we thought you'd enjoy these guys, the Lahavenators. They're the ones I was showing in the moderator chats with the beautiful tails. But yeah, there's a few new species I definitely think Evo should get. But yes, they are small, sort of what size reference? I think they're like Metri size. Where's Metri? Metri? Oh no, Metri is massive in comparison. Crikey. Oh, they're like Monolotho size. Yeah, so they're actually quite small. Yeah, Deinosuchus Monolotho sort of size. But I think they're cute and adorable. A yogurt drink. We have a yogurt drink over here called Yop, which I absolutely adore. I love a Yop. And yeah, I would just, you could use hedges here just to bed this into the park. Gonna make use of different heights here. Again, this is all very quick, since this is just a, experimentation and showing off sort of build. Want some different colors. Yeah. Some red ones in there. Yeah. Although obviously, if you're, if this is how people are coming to the aviary from this path, I would say you'd probably want to have something here at the end of this path. So let's like get rid of some of them. And then let's maybe grab like a rock. Yo, the Lego Endurance is already arriving. Meanwhile, in the corner of my computer room is the enormous box that is the Lego Titanic, which I still haven't started yet. I don't want to start it until I have a way of recording me building it, because I definitely want to build it for the channel. So I kind of want to get at least a video recorder or something in the new year so that I can record building it. And then I can show you people, if not me building it in, in real time, do a time lapse. Do a time lapse. Thank you, Dane, for sneaking up behind me.
I cannot find their goals. I cannot find their name.
Oh, that's quite close to that tree. That's it there.
Yes,
isn't it?
I cannot find its name.
You cannot find its name.
It is annoying me.
Dane has been looking for that weird desert tree that no one seems to know what it is. We've got a picture of it on Google, but like it doesn't have a name. Have you found the name? Have you found it?
Potentially.
Hold up, folks. You had it in the box for months before you started. Just enjoying the thought someday, yeah. It definitely will be a next year thing. You have to build the Lego iceberg first. I don't have a Lego iceberg.
So it looks like that.
No,
Damn it.
that's definitely not it.
Sorry. That is also a sketch, you know.
You have failed.
I'm sorry, it's just because, you know, it's extinct.
It looks similar. I don't think it's an extinct tree. They're all the trees in that you can place are like real life trees, so it's not an extinct one. Just having a domestic with the partner, you know. Sorry about that, folks.
It's on Shutterstock, but it doesn't have the bloody name.
I want a statue to put in this gap here. But it's got to be a fairly, maybe a Therizino. Yeah, just put like a Therizino in there. Because obviously, if you have people coming up to here on the path, you want something nice for them to look at before they go round the edge to have a look at, you know, the Lahavenators. It really annoys me how the guests work in this game. Just like, we'll take the shortest route from here to here. We won't move around. We won't disperse around the park. We're just travel in one go. Crying in console, yeah, console gaming. It's difficult. I do appreciate that, but a lot of like the basic elements of what I'm doing here, of creating guest zones, creating thick paths, thinking about what the purpose of particular areas of your park are, wasting space. Wasting space is so important.
There is one very realistic thing about the AI in this game.
Hmm?
Regardless of how big the path you get put down, they will all try and walk on the same side of it.
Yes.
People do that in real life all the time.
Let's turn these into nice guest areas in the last few minutes. What shall we go with? Let's do... I quite like that European hawthorn tree planter. There it is. I think it works quite nicely here. So we're just gonna... place a few down. I'm actually pretty pleased with how this has gone. Like, I actually really like this enclosure, actually. And I really like using the Jurassic Park Operation Genesis viewing tower there. I should do something like this in one of my builds. There we go. Put in a couple of nice planters. I think we'll go for a slightly asymmetric approach with this. So, we're going to divide this actually into two areas. Going to do 3 of these in one. Maybe an olive tree. Yeah. Contemplating whether to go to sleep or build more. Sleep is important. I won't be sleeping until late because me and Nerd Guy have got to record our next Star Trek video tonight, so I'll be awake for a long time. couple of picnic tables in. Yeah. Gonna do the same thing here. So 1, 2, 3. Olive tree. There we go. Yeah, nice. This looks a little bit empty here, so I'm actually going to... Actually, no. Where is my favorite fountain? Having got the JPOG building mod, I absolutely adore this fountain. I think it's so nice. Put in some benches. I think this could do with a tree or two. Maybe silver maple. How does that look? Yeah, that's very nice. And probably put a few chairs and tables here as well. Just in case people are waiting. Hey, I'm really pleased with that. For a really, really quick guest plaza with viewing tower attached, I'm really happy with that. I think that looks great. But yeah, the Parasaurolophus fountain, I absolutely adore. And it's a different sort of shape to our really horrible circular ones. So even if you don't use like the other JPOG buildings like this glorious viewing tower, although why would you not use this glorious Jurassic Park viewing tower? Like, I personally think it's superior to the existing one. The fountain I would definitely suggest having, just from the JPOG mod. I've also learned recently, when I was doing the video that releases next week about mods I would suggest everyone have. So I've discovered that if you have a active tour, so Gyrosphere, Jurassic Tour, anything like that, and you build, I think it's these Jurassic Park Operation, where is it? These speaker towers. They'll play the same sort of audio that you get in the tour ride. So, you know, as you're going around inside the gyrospheres and stuff, that you'll just hear like random dinosaur facts about whatever dinosaur is nearest. The speakers will play that script. So you can have speakers around your park telling people about your dinosaurs if you have a tour ride active anywhere in your park, which I have got to try to use in a build, because I think that really will add some life, I think, to the park. Yeah, I'm really happy with how this has turned out, and how this little enclosure turned out as well. And yeah, just in 2 hours, for 2 hours work, I don't think that's bad. And it really does demonstrate how easy it is to make parks look good just by spending a little bit of time doing some very simple things like thicker paths and wasting space and using different types of tree and color of tree and that sort of thing. Have you
I think it is a subvariant of acacia.
No.
Subvariant. I don't know. I'm giving up.
Giving up. I would do it on my own.
Good boy.
Yeah, I think this has been a productive 2 hours, and just demonstrates how to improve your own park builds, especially if you're using mods. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in, especially Evo. Always nice to see a much better builder in my stream. And I will see you guys on Sunday, where we'll be back on the Numbers Park, the gambling park, to build some more of that. So yeah, hope everyone has a good night. I'll see you folks tomorrow on Evo's stream. And until then, wherever you are, stay safe and good night.